What if a country's most powerful document, its passport, wasn't something you earned through birth or years of living somewhere, but was something you could just buy? Well, welcome to the world of golden passports. It's a secretive, multi-billion-dollar global market where sovereignty is quite literally for sale. Today, we're going to open the books on this industry. We'll look at how it works, who it's for, and why, all of a sudden, it's facing this huge global backlash. So let's follow the money and see what's really going on. So our story really kicks off with one of the most infamous financial fugitives out there today, a man named Jho Low. This is the guy at the heart of the massive 1MDB scandal, accused of orchestrating the theft of billions of dollars from Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund. And while he was on the run from pretty much everyone, Jho Low managed to buy something incredible: citizenship in the Republic of Cyprus. And with it, he got all the rights of an EU citizen. As Transparency International pointed out, this single deal basically ripped the curtain back on this hidden world and started a massive controversy. And this just begs the question, right? How on earth is it possible for a guy who's under this much international heat, a man wanted in multiple countries, to just purchase access to one of the most powerful economic blocs on the planet? Well, the answer reveals this really sophisticated and very lucrative industry that operates in the gray areas of international law. An industry that was, until very recently, absolutely booming. To really get how this all works, we first need to just break down this one case. It's really the perfect example of how the whole industry operates. You know, the players, the money, and the quiet little mechanisms that make it all possible. See, Jho Low didn't just walk up and write a check to the government of Cyprus. No, the money moved through this whole network of intermediaries. We're talking lawyers, real estate agents, consultants, and they pocketed a cool 710,000 euros just for their services. That fee covered the application, sure, but also a huge commission for setting up a real estate deal that helped Low qualify. So you see, this isn't some shady back alley deal. It's a professional service industry built around selling citizenship. And here's the thing, Jho Low's story wasn't some one-off incident. It was just the one that made all the headlines. It was an example of a global market that's been humming along for decades. So let's zoom out a bit and look at the blueprint for this entire industry. Okay, so the industry basically sells two main products, and it's really important to get the difference. Over on the left, you have citizenship-by-investment, or CBI. This is the famous golden passport. The deal here is pretty straightforward. You make a big investment, usually in real estate or a government fund, and boom, you and your family get full citizenship almost right away. And the key thing is, most of these programs didn't even require you to spend any real time in the country. Now on the right, you have residence by investment, or RBI. People call this a golden visa. With this, your investment gets you a residence permit, not a passport right away. It just puts you on the fast track to apply for citizenship down the road. Think of it as buying a front-of-the-line pass for immigration. So who's actually selling these direct golden passports? Well, as you can see from this map, the market is really dominated by smaller countries, especially in the Caribbean and the Mediterranean. Places like St. Kitts and Nevis, Dominica, Malta, and of course Cyprus before its program shut down. For them, selling citizenship isn't just some quirky idea. It's a huge source of their national income, and we'll circle back to that in a minute. And then you look at this, and you see the golden visa market is on a whole other level. I mean, we're talking about over 60 countries, and that includes major economies like the United States with its EB-5 visa, and a bunch of European countries like Portugal, Spain, and Greece. So this just shows you that using investment to attract wealthy immigrants is a pretty widespread global playbook, not just some niche thing. So who's the customer here? Who is actually buying these things? Well, the demand really comes from a few key groups. For a long time, a huge market has been wealthy folks from countries like China and Russia who are looking for security, maybe a better quality of life, and a way to move their money into more stable places. Then you've got your global billionaires, like Peter Thiel, who collects citizenships almost like a hobby. It's another form of asset diversification. Another flag, another passport, another place to go. For lots of people, the goal is just mobility. A passport from Malta gives you visa-free access to hundreds of countries. And underneath it all is this idea of an insurance policy. You know, a plan B for a world that feels more and more unstable. But to really get a handle on the stakes here, you have to follow the money. And the sheer amount of capital flowing through these programs as well. It's pretty staggering. Every year, it's estimated that around 50,000 people, and that includes the main applicants and their families, get a new citizenship through one of these programs. Now, to put that in perspective, that's like the entire population of a small city changing their nationality every single year. It's a huge, constant flow of global elites literally reshaping who they are on paper. Now, the price of admission can vary a lot. At the very top end, you had the old Cyprus program, which required a €2 million investment, mostly in real estate. That was the premium product, right? Direct access to the EU. Malta's program is in that same ballpark, costing around €870,000. And then you have the Caribbean options. St. Kitts and Nevis, which was really the pioneer of this whole industry, offers citizenship for a minimum investment of $250,000. The price basically reflects the value of the passport itself, mostly how many countries it lets you travel to without a visa. And if you want to understand the economic kickback for the host countries, just look at Portugal. Its Golden Visa program, a residency one, has pulled in over €7 billion in foreign investment since 2012. Now, for a country that was recovering from a pretty bad debt crisis, this flood of cash was a massive economic stimulus. It poured into their real estate market and completely transformed cities. And for the small island nations in the Caribbean, these programs aren't just a bonus. They are a fundamental part of the national economy. Between 2019 and 2023, the money from these programs made up an average of 6.5% of their entire GDP. To give you some context, for the U.S., that would be like finding an extra $1.7 trillion of revenue every year. In some years, this has accounted for over 20% of their GDP, funding everything from hospitals to hurricane relief. This economic dependence is really the key to understanding why these programs are still around. But this fire hose of cash came with enormous risks. You could even say unacceptable risks. The Jolo scandal was the big wake-up call, and pretty soon international organizations started taking a much closer look at these programs, which led to a major security backlash. The European Commission, for one, pointed out 4 huge risks. First, security. When Malta sells a passport, it's not just giving access to Malta. It's giving visa-free access to the entire 27-nation EU and the borderless Schengen area. So if the vetting is weak, a criminal or a security threat gets a backdoor to the whole continent. Second, money laundering. These programs were a perfect way to move dirty money into clean assets, like prime European real estate. Third, tax evasion. A new passport can muddy the waters on where you're supposed to pay taxes. And finally, corruption. All that money sloshing around with very little transparency, it was a recipe for shady deals. And these weren't just hypothetical fears. An official investigation into the Cyprus program after it was shut down came back with a truly shocking finding. 53%, more than half, of the passports had been granted illegally. This means the applicants didn't even properly meet the criteria, which were already pretty loose. The takeaway here is crucial. This wasn't a system with a few bad apples. The system itself was fundamentally broken. And the backlash wasn't just about security. It was also philosophical. The EU's highest court, in a ruling aimed at Malta's program, really took issue with the whole concept of selling citizenship. They argued that it cheapens what nationality means, reducing it to a mere commercial transaction. It cuts the cord between being a citizen and having any genuine connection to a country, its people, or its culture. All of this led to a wave of action. In 2019, the EU Commission put out its first big report outlining the dangers. Then in 2020, Cyprus, just buried in scandal, was forced to shut its program down. In 2022, right after the invasion of Ukraine, the UK got rid of its own investor visa because of fears it was being used by sanctioned Russian oligarchs. And by 2023, the pressure had shifted to the Caribbean, with the US Treasury basically forcing the 5 nations there to agree to a new set of reforms. So how was all of this even possible to begin with? Well, it all exploited this fundamental contradiction at the very heart of the European Union. See, deciding who gets to be a citizen has always been seen as the sovereign right of each individual country. But EU law also says that a citizen of any member country is a citizen of the entire Union. So a decision made in Cyprus automatically had consequences for every other member. It meant one country could sell access to the whole EU, while 26 other countries were forced to share in the risk. Now, this intense international pressure hasn't killed the industry, but it has forced it into a moment of really profound change. So, what does the future of all this look like? The industry is being pushed towards what everyone is calling a genuine link model, and this is a direct answer to the EU's main criticism. St. Kitts and Nevis, for instance, has already announced that starting in 2026, their program is going to require things like mandatory interviews and even some form of physical residency. The whole point is to move away from a purely transactional deal and prove that new citizens have at least some real, tangible connection to the country. It's about adding some substance back into what had become just a financial exchange. And this brings us to the core conflict at the center of this whole debate. On one hand, for these small Caribbean nations, these programs are an economic lifeline. They fund public services, they rebuild after natural disasters, they stabilize budgets. But on the other hand, for the European Union and the United States, these exact same programs look like a major security backdoor, one that undermines their immigration and financial controls. Figuring out how to solve that problem is the central challenge for everyone involved. And that leaves us with one final and pretty provocative question. For most of human history, citizenship has been tied to where you were born, your family, or a long-term commitment to a place. But the golden passport industry really challenges that idea. It reframes citizenship as just another asset in a globalized portfolio, a tool for mobility and security that's available to anyone who can afford the price tag. And as we move forward in a world with so much inequality and instability, this question of what citizenship really means is one we're all going to have to confront.
So while markets rise and fall, systems like this quietly move billions behind the scenes, hidden from the public, hidden from scrutiny, and sometimes hidden from the law itself. Because in global finance, the most powerful forces are rarely the most visible. And this is just one of the systems used by the unseen elite.